Hi, it's Steph, and tonight I'm hosting a garden tour of my garden. I am part of the local garden club, and each summer we will do tours of members' gardens. So each Wednesday night at 6:30, we will tour a different member's garden, and tonight happens to be my turn. So my guests are due to arrive in about 45 minutes, so I thought this was a good opportunity to kind of walk you through the garden and show you what is looking really nice right now at the end of June. We'll start here in my patio bed, and I actually thinned out quite a few plants from this area here recently because I had a lot of daylily foliage and it was actually crowding out all of these hydrangeas. I have a drift of the Firelight Tidbit hydrangeas that I planted last season, and they are starting to grow and bud up and probably bloom in about a month. So I really wanted to let them shine. So I did take out a lot of things that were kind of crowded in this area, and I think it's looking much better. My coneflowers are starting to bloom, and the first one that started to bloom is right here. This is the double scoop raspberry, and it is a really pretty color. It's one of the scoop varieties which has this puff at the top with the petals that kind of hang off the bottom. I've had that one for a few years now, and it always does really well. And recently, I was able to find some yarrow. I had been looking for yarrow, and a variety that I had before that I lost was the Tutti Frutti Apricot Delight, and I was happy to find this one that looks very similar. It has a pretty pink that then ages to this salmon, and then it gets a really light apricot at the end. So that's why I love yarrow. It goes through so many color changes and looks really pretty. It actually is very complementary with my lavender that I have planted in this area. Coming around the corner here, I have some Golden Jubilee hyssop that I actually grew from seed last year, and it came back for me this year. It is a perennial, and it has a really nice minty fragrance on the leaves and this yellow chartreuse color. And you can see that it is just starting to bloom with these like light purple lavender spike type blooms. And I have another group of coneflowers right here that are just starting to bloom, and this is the Echinacea purpurea. I started these from seed, and each year the clump gets a little bit bigger, and it's also looking really pretty. Pretty soon my coneflower powwow wildberry will start blooming, and my white swan, and I just can't wait. Coneflowers are my favorite flower in my garden for a perennial. And let me show you my rose ICU. So I have my carding mill that actually sent out 2 blooms for me this week. And even though the leaves look like they're getting eaten by something, and I've had to deal with a little bit of black spot and yellow leaf, they're giving me buds and blooms, which is really exciting. This one is the Alnwick, and it also had a couple of blooms recently. And of course, because I do love roses, even though they don't love me back, I recently purchased another rose to keep in a container, and this one is called the Sweet Mademoiselle. I recently watered it like yesterday, so now it's leaking, but another really pretty one with a large salmon colored bloom. Look at that. And it smells so nice. So we'll see how this one does. I'm going to keep it potted for now as well. And an update on my containers that we potted up together a couple of videos ago. They are already starting to fill out. So here I have this grouping of 3. Look how large this blue suede shoes salvia has gotten. Yeah, the rockin' blue suede shoes. Someone commented about the tags that I keep in my containers, but you can't even see them once the plant starts growing. And I like it because it's there for reference. If I forget the name of the plant, look at that. I can just pull it out and read it. But it has a really pretty bluish purple color. But at this rate, I have a feeling that this is going to get very large. And here you can see that I have this elephant ear that is also putting on some good size and sending out a bunch of new leaves. Look at the color on that. It's gorgeous. So there's been so much growth in just a few weeks. And this container here, I had just this trailing Calibrachoa in the front. It's the Superbells, let's see, double amber. But then I recently, and I had this here, which is an osteoporum, but I recently went to Walmart and they had these on clearance for $2, this lobelia. So I just tucked it in the corner there, and I think it looks really pretty in this arrangement. And I have one more container that I want to show you that's looking really lovely. This might be my favorite container at the moment. Just check out how big these sun patients have gotten. These are the orange sun patient, and I paired it in here with some ferns. I took a division of my Boston fern, as well as a coleus that I've already started to pinch so that I can get a little bit bushier. And this lobelia. And look at it. With the creeping Jenny, I just feel like the colors and the textures look so pretty together, and I'm really happy with this arrangement. And I really can't believe how big these sun patience have gotten. So I've already made a note in my phone to buy sun patience for a lot of my containers for next year. And one more container update. Here is the tuberous begonias that I had with these really pretty ruffly blooms. And this is the licorice, and then the diamond frost euphorbia, and I have a coleus in the back here with the cordyline that I had overwintered. And you can see that it is filling out so nicely. This has been growing and growing, and I'm just really excited about how it's looking. And I'm really loving these orange colors that I chose for these containers this year. All right, let's go take a look over at the shed beds. I'm on the side of my shed, and here you can see this is a quickfire hydrangea, and it has already started to bud up. This is one of the earliest panicle hydrangeas that I have in my garden to bloom, so probably in the next couple of weeks it's going to be all in bloom. And another thing that I'm always really excited about is a stilbe. You can see that it is just now starting to open up and look really pretty. These are going to be opening soon. So those are the first ones, and then I have some in the front there that I'll go show you. And these. Now the varieties are all mixed. I have quite a few varieties in here, and these were all started from bare root plants. They took a couple of years to get going, but the more I looked into a stilbe, I started to realize that they really like a soil that is pretty consistently moist but well draining, and they also like fertilizer. So if you give them some moist soil and fertilizer, they will bloom for you beautifully. Look at that. You have such beautiful fuzzy plume blooms. And in this corner, you can see that the hardy hibiscus, this is the Proven Winners Perfect Storm hardy hibiscus, is already starting to fill up this corner. Now this will get quite large by the time it blooms, usually in August for me in my Zone 6 garden. It will get to about the height of this post here, and it will get much wider. And it has these really large dinner plate sized blooms that are light pink with kind of a red center. Just really gorgeous and an impactful plant. So if you're looking for blooms for your late summer garden, the hardy hibiscus is a great one. My containers are also filling out really nicely. Now the mandevilla that I have in these window boxes are still yet to bloom. They had a couple of buds on them, but they're taking their sweet time putting out any flowers. So the experiment on overwintering mandevilla continues. You can see I have a couple of blooms here that are getting ready to open, but we are now at the end of June. And they're just starting to bloom. The ones on my front porch are a little further ahead. And this is a new to me annual this year called Mizu, and you can see how it's filling out so nicely and intermixing with the creeping Jenny. It's like a succulent type of plant. I'm really liking it. And the tall planters that I had put some elephant air in the center, and I planted one of the little 4-inch containers of this latte supertunia, and look how large it has already gotten. This is one plant, and it has already made its way around the container. It's got a really pretty creamy bloom with a dark center. You actually can't even see the Dusty Miller that I started from seed that I tucked in here, because Supertunia is just growing much faster than the Dusty Miller. But I really like this combination, the dark with the light petunia and the yellow creeping Jenny. And my hedge of little lime hydrangeas is also getting quite large at the moment. And by the time they're done growing, they really do make this kind of a wall, which is wonderful for this new garden room area that we just finished up recently. In my last video, I gave you a really quick look at this beautiful iris that I have planted behind my hedge of little limes. And it is an iris ensata, and the variety is called tiramisu. And it is a really large and beautiful iris. Look at that. So gorgeous. This area we recently showed in one of the videos that we titled redoing our cozy patio into a garden room, and we're really happy with this space. We've been spending a lot of time out here, and it's just a really enjoyable place to spend some time. These planters are doing really well. The heuchera has already put out some new leaves, and the ferns are opening up. I really love this combination, both the combo of the colors as well as the different texture. And in this Japanese maple garden, we have a lot of foliage colored plants like heucheras and painted ferns. So everything pretty much looks the same at the moment, but there was one thing that I wanted to show you, actually two things that I'm going to show you in this area. And one of them is right here. Last year, I added some dark side of the moon astilbe. And while it doesn't have a ton of blooms this year, there are a couple of bloom stalks. So you can see there's one here and there are a couple right here. So they bloom in this really light kind of whitish pink color. But what's really beautiful about them is this dark foliage. Now, because I do dark mulch, it kind of blends in, but I think it's a beautiful foliage plant and I'm really enjoying them. And the other plant that I want to show you is my lady's mantle. Now, I actually grew lady's mantle from seed last year, and some of them have even bloomed for me this year in year 2. So let me go ahead and show you how that looks. Look at these. I absolutely love lady's mantle because they have these kind of whimsical blooms that look like baby's breath. I've actually used these cut in some flower arrangements and they look beautiful as a filler. And I am not in any hurry to cut these. They've been blooming for about 3 weeks now, so they bloom for a really long time and I just love the way they look. They're kind of just spilling over the edge of this walkway and I think they're great. Now here's the patch that I grew from seed that I planted out. And they've put on some really good size. And they even had a few bloom stalks this year. So this is only a second-year plant grown from seed. So I started it from seed last year in 2023. And this is what they look like a year later in 2024. I actually just have to point out this fern. This is called a Godzilla fern. And it is amazing. I have a few Japanese painted ferns in my garden, but this one might be my favorite. Look how pretty that is. So if you have a shady spot in the garden, these have really pretty color and texture. All right, we're gonna walk down to the raised bed garden and I'm gonna show you a few things that look really nice in that area, and then we will go ahead and wrap it up in the front. On our way down to the raised bed garden, I just want to make a pit stop here and show you something that I was pretty upset about a couple of days ago. This is an eastern redbud, and I absolutely love this tree, and it is a native tree, but the problem with this tree is that it is very weak in windstorms. We get quite a bit of wind here, and I can't tell you how many limbs we've already lost off of this tree. In fact, look at that. There's another really big crack that George is going to go in and saw off. But it's really upsetting because every time the canopy starts looking really beautiful and round, here comes a windstorm and we inevitably end up losing a branch or two. And it's been really frustrating. Yeah, here's a wound that healed from the last time we had to saw off a branch that had cracked. So if I knew now, what I know now is that I would probably plant a multi-trunk if I was going to plant an eastern redbud, because I feel like they would be more sturdy than having this really large canopy on a single stem tree. So anyhow, just a little bit of caution with the eastern redbud. If you are in a spot that gets a lot of wind, I find them prone to damage from wind. And here in my raised bed garden, we redid this space a couple of months ago. We had some rotted wood beds in here and we decided to replace them with some metal raised beds. And these beautiful beds are by Vigo Garden. And I really love the way that this garden turned out. But here my snapdragons have bloomed. Now these are pretty tall plants and I didn't support them, so they kind of got a little floppy, but there are some blooms that are looking really pretty. And the variety was Orange Wonder by Baker Creek. Snapdragons are a cool weather plant, so at this point, they're only going to last a little bit and then they're probably going to fizzle out. I'm actually going to cut one of these. Isn't that pretty? Really nice. And I have some things that are really picking up speed in here, specifically the feverfew, which I grew as a filler plant because I think it would look really nice interplanted, or in a bouquet rather, with larger flowers like these asters that are also looking gorgeous, as well as dahlias and zinnias. These asters are the Janina Salmon Aster. I also bought the seeds from Baker Creek, and look how gorgeous that is. So pretty. I did pinch these Cosmos, so they're really starting to bush out now and should start blooming soon. But these marigolds are looking awesome. Now, these are supposed to be a white marigold, but I don't think there is a such thing as a pure white marigold. The closest you're going to find is something like this creamy, buttery yellow, kind of like an ivory color. But they are so full and just doing really well. You can see I have a stand of them on both sides of this little path we have between the two beds. The craspedia that I grew is starting to put on their blooms. It's going to have a little round yellow kind of drumstick bloom. Really cute. And even the straw flowers. Look at that. They have kind of like a papery texture. And this is the Salmon King variety from Select Seeds. The sweet peas are really picking up and starting to climb the trellis here. And my first Cafe au lait dahlia is blooming. Now, this is really early for me to have dahlias in bloom. The only reason that they are blooming is because these were plants that were shared with me. And that one had a little bug on it. Look at that. It's so beautiful. And a few days ago, I had shown you this beauty, which is called Daddy's Girl. It's a really pretty light pink, and it has even more blooms now. But this is a new bloom, and this is Diva. And look how gorgeous this one is. Isn't that so pretty? All right, let's head over to, I'm going to show you a couple of things in the pollinator bed out front, and then we will make our way out to the front beds because I think our guests are going to arrive soon. Let me give you an update on the DIY weed killer that I showed in my last video. It was a little bit controversial in the comments section, so I don't know if I'll share about weed killer in the future, but I didn't want to use anything chemical, so I did mix up the regular vinegar with table salt and some Dawn dish soap, and you can see that it did really kill the weeds. Now, I think it is just the surface level weeds. It's probably not going to kill off the roots, or at least not anytime soon unless I do it over and over again, but I'm pretty happy with the results, I have to say. For one application, pretty good. And then it rained. And then it rained. So had it been dry and sunny for the whole weekend, it probably would have been even better, but I'm pretty happy with those results. So this pollinator bed, I had started this to bring pollinators to my vegetable garden when I was growing more veggies, and my daisies are starting to bloom. I also have this coreopsis here, which is called Moonbeam. It's a really pretty coreopsis in this really light yellow. And look at all of these buds. This will bloom for me nonstop from right now in very early summer all the way through my first hard frost at the end of October. And some bee balm that is just starting to bloom now. And that phlox, which is a really pretty phlox. I don't even remember the variety, but it's a really bright coral. Is just starting to bloom now as well. When you come up the path from the raised bed garden, I have here what I call my mixed shrub border. Now, this is a work in progress, so it doesn't look great at the moment, but it's something that over the years I'm going to add shrubs to it, and eventually the border will come out a little bit. But I want it to be mostly low maintenance, so it's going to be just some shrubs and evergreens. But you can see that I put some edging stones here. These are the edging stones that I removed from our patio bed, and this is here as a way to help us with maintenance, because when we have to cut the lawn, George has to go in between each of these shrubs and weed whack. So having this here, we're thinking that we're going to either remove the sod or put down some cardboard with some mulch to kind of keep this area easier to maintain. So disregard the way it looks for the moment. This is just kind of like what we would call phase one. But here I have another quick fire hydrangea that is all budded up and will be blooming soon. This was a hydrangea that I actually purchased on clearance for really cheap, and it didn't do really well for a couple of years, but now in year 3, it's looking fabulous. A Hinoki cypress. This is a Wells Hinoki that had gotten pretty damaged by deer. They don't touch any other Hinoki in my garden, but they really went to town on this one. But it recovered beautifully and is doing really well. And my smoke bush. This is the Royal Purple Smoke Bush, and it has all of its blooms on it right now, which just looks like a puff. It's going to open up. You can see that the buds are there. And the foliage is really pretty. It has these round leaves. It's really vibrant in the spring, a bright red, and then it deepens to this purple color as the season goes on. You can see here an example of how the new growth is a lot brighter. But this conifer here really shines in late spring, early summer. This is a Taylor's Sunburst pine. And look at these beautiful bright yellow tips that this pine gets. Gorgeous. This is another hinoki, and this one is called Sunny Swirl. Yeah, Sunny Swirl, that's what it is. This hinoki has a really pretty golden color, and it's kind of contorted in its growth habit. And it has kind of like a pyramidal shape, and it's really cool. So that is what I'm doing along this edge. I'm mostly planting conifers, some shrubs. This is the Seven Suns flower that I planted last season. And currently it just looks like a little bush or a little shrub. But eventually I will start to limb it up like a small tree. And it has a lot of interest throughout the season. It will have these large green leaves, and then it will get some blooms that are white. And then even after the blooms fade, you get these pink, once the calyx, I think they're called, that hold on to the blooms that look really pretty. And then one of my favorites, the gold mop cypress, and this elderberry that I have moved about 4 times in my garden. It is looking worse for the wear. It probably will end up getting pulled at some point, and I'm going to replace it with a 9 bark. But it's still holding on to life. This is a fern spray false cypress, a gold version. I really love it, and it's really cool, kind of whimsical sort of evergreen. But this border here is looking really nice. I'm really happy with the way it's turning out, even though it is a work in progress. And a really large, this is the Bloomerang lilac. I will tell you, even though it's supposed to be a reblooming lilac, it does not rebloom for me in my garden. In fact, I'm thinking about removing it and replacing it with a more prolific variety. But first, I will replace the elderberry with a 9 bark, one thing at a time. And in this front bed here, things are starting to look really great. They're going to start blooming like crazy pretty soon, and I'm really excited about it. So here I have a large group of Rudbeckia, and it is the black-eyed Susan that I had transplanted from another area in the garden, and these will start blooming a little bit later. But currently I have my coneflowers that are in bloom. This is the purpurea, the Echinacea purpurea, the native variety of coneflower. And there is quite a few of it, quite a bit you can see here in this area. And then right on the side, I also have some Blue Fortune agastache or hyssop. It might be Blue Fortune hyssop that I added last year, and it's starting to bloom now. So the combination of this Blue Fortune agastache with the Rudbeckia, as well as the coneflowers, I think are going to look really beautiful together. And my phlox. Now this is the Fashionably Early Crystal Phlox, and it is pretty much done at this point. It does sporadically rebloom for me later in the season if I go through and deadhead it. Still has a couple of buds to open up, but it did look beautiful about a week and a half ago, and it's just now pretty much done. But in the back there, I have a group of Rose Campion. Now, this plant was given to me by my sister-in-law, and it does spread quite a bit. So if you are worried about it self-seeding everywhere, you might not want to add it to your garden, but it's pretty easy to control. The seedlings look like little fuzzy bunches of almost like a lamb's ear, because it has that same blue-gray fuzzy texture. And then you get these cute little carnation type blooms. This color happens to be this hot pink, but I've also seen them in light pink and in white. But they're looking really nice at the moment with some daisies that are also starting to bloom. And in the back, I have some Blue Glow Globe Thistle that I started from seed that will start blooming pretty soon. I have 2 plants there that I started from seed. And my penstemon, this is the Midnight Masquerade penstemon, and it is quite tall this year. And you can see that it has these little bell-shaped blooms, and it's really beautiful. This is the other phlox that I've actually already deadheaded. And I have to work on the other one. Now this side is strange because the hyssop on that side, or the agastache, has already started to bloom, but this one hasn't. And the phlox on that side is all done as well. And this one just finished up. So they're a little off on the sides. I'm not sure. The light conditions might be different from one side of the bed to the next. But here I have this Semphal's spirea. Now this is a shrub that in the spring looks absolutely gorgeous with its coloring, because it has shades of yellow and pink and chartreuse green. That is what the new color looks like. And then it will go green, but send up these bloom stalks. Now I do have to deadhead these, but some of them you can see that they almost look like little pearls. And there's actually a really good one down here. Look at that. When those little pearls open up, you get these tiny little blooms. And I made a whole spotlight video on this Semphal's spirea. But I think it's a really interesting shrub, both for the spring color as well as the texture, because it looks like a big fern in the garden. All right, so moving along, I actually planted some of the these are Sahara Rudbeckia that I grew from seed, and I planted them here, and I left an open space in the middle because I have a project coming up where I'm going to add some dwarf hydrangeas. So I wanted to make sure to leave an open spot for that. And my front planters are also looking really nice. Now, most of the things in these front planters are either perennials or grown from seed. So here I grew this pansy from seed, and pansies will peter out in the summer because they don't like the heat, but it's still doing okay. So I just cut it back and I left it in this planter along with a geranium that my friend Maureen at Parsons Peonies had shared with me. Here is the mandevilla that I overwintered. Now this one's a little further ahead than the white, and I usually do not deadhead these, but since I'm here now, I will just pull off those blooms. But you can see that it has quite a few buds and has already bloomed a little bit. And this is the Dichondra Silver Falls that's going to start to drape in front of the container. I put some raspberry ripple zinnias in here that I grew from seed, so that should fill out this container pretty well. So that is a great way to make your budget stretch when it comes to annuals. You can buy some at the nursery, like I bought this lantana, but you can also supplement with some things that you grow from seed. All right, moving along. And in this corner, I'm also going to plant a dwarf hydrangea. If you recall a few videos back, I had shown you these Carl Forrester grasses that I had in either corner of the porch in these beds. And I didn't like the way that they looked because they would start to flop over and look really messy. So I took them out. Hydrangea's going there instead. And we finally brought out our fountain. Now this is a fountain that I purchased at a local nursery, but it is available on Amazon. I can link it below if anyone's interested, but it's in the color burnt umber. And I really love the sound of water as you're coming up or down the walkway. And I think it's a really nice touch to greet your guests. I cut back all of my iris. So when they're done blooming, I usually just cut them back and then they start to send up fresh new foliage. And my gomphrena seedlings are doing really well. So this is the atomic purple gomphrena. You can see that the plants start to branch out, and by the end of the season, they'll be spilling over my walkway and looking really pretty. My roses are now done blooming. They get their first really big flush in the beginning of June. And they're starting to look worse for the wear now. They definitely need some deadheading. And just like every other year, I did get the sawtooth larva infestation again. And what they do is they just really make the leaves look terrible. They have these little green caterpillars, but they will start pushing out. The shrub will push out some new leaves. In a few weeks, it'll look like nothing ever happened. And it doesn't harm the health of the rose. It just makes them look a little unsightly. But these will bloom and bloom and bloom for me until late October when we get our first frost. And my candy corn spirea just finished blooming, so I did go through and deadhead it some. I have a few more blooms that I need to cut off, but they get these really pretty hot pink blooms. And you can see how much color variation there is on this shrub. The chartreuse green and yellow with the new growth in red. Just a really great spirea. I cut back all of my salvia and the nepeta. I did some selective pruning so that it still looks like there's some blooms on it while it waits to reload with some more blooms. And let me show you something really interesting. I grew this coneflower from seed. This is supposed to be the white swan coneflower. But look what's happening. I'm starting to get some purpurea in here as well. And it turns out that the white swan echinacea is derived from the purpurea variety of echinacea. And so after a few years, they can start to revert. So this is the original plant that they then made the white swan out of. So at some point you might get purple again. So that is what I see happening here. So I'm just waiting for more blooms to open up to see if this is just a one-off or if I actually get more purple in this batch, because these appear to be white, but this one almost looks like it has a little bit of purple coloration to the petal. But we'll see once it opens up a little bit more. Oh, look at that. There's a couple more purple ones in the front here. So I thought that was really wild. These are about 3 years old now in my garden. I want to say this is either the third or the fourth season. I start to lose track after a while, but I know that I did grow them from seed. And that's what's happening now. They're going from white to purple. And that is it in this bed. My Carly Rose ornamental grass came back this year, so that's really exciting. And it's starting to get their plumes in this like pinkish color. And the last bed that we'll look at is this one here. I have these Asiatic lilies that are in bloom. This is the Tiny Dancer by Monrovia, and they are just starting to fade at this point, but they're a really pretty pink Asiatic lily that's kind of a shorter stature. I have them right behind my lavender bubbles alliums that will also bloom shortly after the millennium blooms. And then I have some Casablanca lilies that are starting to bud up, and that's going to look really pretty soon. And in this area, last year, if you recall, if you're around the channel, I had a drift of the raspberry ripple zinnias. And this year I put the raspberry ripple zinnias by my front driveway walls. But this year I have some ageratum, which I have been putting ageratum here for the last several years that I grew from seed. And I also interplanted it with some foxglove. And this foxglove is the Dalmatian peach. It's supposed to be a perennial version of foxglove, which most varieties are biennial. And we'll see if we'll get blooms this year, and if they do bloom, whether or not they return. And just a few months ago, I had found some of this rock and grow coral jade sedum at the Home Depot in small quart-sized containers. And it was a really exciting find for me because quart size is, one, more affordable, and two, really easy to plant because they're a much smaller container, right? So the root ball is smaller. And I went ahead and I planted all 3 of them here in this bed. So that is it. This is what I'm going to be showing my guests when they arrive this evening. I think it's going to be a great night for a garden tour. It's starting to get a little bit cloudy. We are supposed to get thunderstorms overnight, but hopefully it'll hold off long enough for me to be able to give my guests a tour of my garden. So if I am able to get some footage, I will insert it here at the end of the video. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.